Welcome, everyone. This is Ekaterina Konovalova. I am the director of Martekify. Martekify is a community of over 1,000 members interested in digital marketing, MarTech, and AI. And today, my guest is Dr. Art Markman, who is a Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. He is a man of many talents, a scientist, researcher, university executive, prolific writer, talk show host, musician, the list goes on and on. Today we'll talk about how AI is changing higher ed, as well as how it's impacting recent graduates.
Yep, thanks so much. It's really great to be talking with you today.
Wonderful. So can you tell us a little bit more about your role, just to clarify it, what it means to be the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs?
So I think most people don't know what many of the words in that title mean. I mean, we'll start with the Provost's office. So provosts at universities, of course, are our chief academic officer, and the Provost's office really oversees the academic mission. My role in academic affairs is to really look at the education mission broadly. That includes undergraduate education, graduate education, continuing and professional education, both our faculty-facing work as well as our student-facing work. We are the keepers here at the University of Texas of what we call the Longhorn Learning Experience. So we want to make it as easy as possible for our students to learn, our faculty to teach, and to make it a unique burnt orange University of Texas experience.
Well, I love it because this is my alma mater as well. So let's talk about how AI is changing the academic life. So obviously now with ChatGPT and similar programs, it's much easier for students to do research and write. And also probably even it may help or also complicate the life of professors. So how do you see this change and how the university navigates maybe plagiarism or wants to teach students to do a good job writing and thinking versus outsourcing it to AI?
You know, I think there are two big influences that AI is going to be having on higher education. The most immediate has to do with assessment. So one of the big questions is, how do you determine that a student has learned something? And higher education has not always been really at the forefront of developing good assessments. So we may just do something like, hey, write an essay on this, or we're going to give you a take-home exam. And I think that what ChatGPT is forcing us to do is to really rethink the assessment component. What are we really doing to demonstrate that a student has actually achieved a particular skill, a particular competence in something? And so that's it. I think we've had to be much more reflective as faculty about how to do that well. I think the other place where a lot of these generative AI models are having an impact is in really trying to help us to get students to focus on what it is that they're supposed to be getting out of classes. So if you think about it, the purpose of writing an essay is not to complete the essay. The purpose is something else. It's to learn something. It's to organize your thoughts. It's to develop a facility with language, whatever it is. And often we don't do a great job of articulating to our students what it is that they're supposed to get out of doing the assignment. And so for them, they can be forgiven for thinking that maybe just completing the assignment itself is important by any means necessary. And I think that if we can do a better job, and this is something we're spending a lot of time doing here at the University of Texas, if we can do a better job of helping students to understand why they're doing particular exercises, why they're doing particular assignments, then they're much less likely to bring in tools to evade the actual learning that they're supposed to do. One of the ways that I talk about this is, let's face it, if your job is to shoot free throws in front of 19,000 people, you're not going to pay somebody else to do your free throw shooting practice, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's got to do it in front of the crowd. And that's the same thing that's happening in college education. You're the one who's going to be on the hook for those skills when you go off and get a job. But we're not doing a good enough job of explaining that really we're preparing you to shoot free throws in front of 19,000 people.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about graduation. So let's say students are the ones that are graduating now, they definitely see a very challenging market, especially for entry-level specialists, because according to recent studies, I went to AI conference back in April, and it seems that many employers would prefer to hire either a freelancer, a robot, AI assistant, or even a retired employee versus a new graduate. And that's a scary statistic because unemployment among younger graduates is higher. And especially since we're in the marketing field, so much marketing work has been automated by AI, from writing to analytics to some design work. So what are your thoughts on how these recent graduates can stay competitive?
Yeah. Well, I think there are two things that recent graduates need to do. The first of which is to really understand what skills they bring to their employer immediately. And so taking the time to engage in some kind of certificate around project management or another skill that can get you through the door is useful. Now, those certificates don't keep you employed, they just get you through the door. And this is where understanding the value of the 4-year degree also matters. So the reason for doing a 4-year degree program is that it really teaches you a lot of these much deeper, durable thinking skills that will sustain you, teaching you how to learn, how to communicate, how to understand the audience that you're speaking to, how to solve problems using data, how to frame a question so that you can get data that would help you to answer it, how to really become more creative, how to go beyond just the obvious solution to something. Those are things that a 4-year degree program teaches, but we as higher education need to do a better job of helping students to articulate that these are the things they're bringing to the workplace. The reason why a company should be hiring a college graduate is not that they couldn't get a bot to do some of that job today. It's that they're not going to be able to get the bot to actually drive the creative work in the future, to determine strategically which path needs to be taken. And those are things that students aren't going to learn just in college, because a lot of that is stuff that they learn when working with an employer. But we are creating students who are capable of learning, who are capable of that kind of critical thinking, so that they will be better than a bot a year from now. And I think we need to help employers to remember that the reason you're hiring a new college graduate is that while they may have some catching up to do in the first few months as they learn the way the company does its work, over time, they are going to save lots of money and time relative to an unskilled person, a gig worker, or a bot, because they are going to learn how to drive strategically towards a critical goal.
Mm. And it just reminds me, because sometimes these young students and recent graduates can be the most technically skilled and the early adopters of new technology. So for example, when I was at UT in grad school, Twitter just came out, and the first assignment in our public relations class when I was a teaching assistant was to tweet, and that was brand new. So basically, those graduates were the top-notch
That's right.
experts on social media at that time. So do you have any examples now where UT empowers students with the leading edge, cutting edge technology where they're the early adopters?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly encouraging our students to engage with AI, for example, and to learn how to generate prompts and to build their own GPTs. We're going to be launching a new platform this fall that will be available to all students so that they can build their own GPTs and play around with that. So certainly in the AI space, we're encouraging our students to be early adopters. We don't want them shying away from it. We want them to engage, just to engage responsibly. But I think there's lots of tools where that's true. So for example, our students who are learning quantitative methods are not just learning old school statistics packages, they're learning things like R, which are at the cutting edge of how statistical analysis gets done. Our students have access to some of the latest machinery in different kinds of technology environments, and that's allowing them to, we have a wonderful makerspace here where students can engage with 3D printers and and all kinds of, laser cutters and all kinds of other design tools. So there's a lot out there where our students can engage, sometimes in class, sometimes extracurricularly. And we really spend a lot of time encouraging our students to explore. I think experiential learning is an important part of what we do. There's a lot you learn in class, but there's also a lot you learn outside of class by playing with things outside of the context of trying to get a grade for something.
Yes, and is it a part of, by the way, I remember the media lab where there's a professional theater, professional
Right.
recording studio, professional photography studio. So is it available to all majors or just specifically radio, film, and television or communications? Can
We
anybody?
We actually, yeah, we will make almost all of our facilities available to any interested student. I mean, there's a little bit of work the student needs to put in. So when you think about whether it's the media labs or whether it's our maker spaces, you have to learn to use the equipment. But we're not restricting it to particular majors. There are times of year where particular major might get priority because they need to use a facility for their class. But there's plenty of hours available for people to be able to play with the equipment. And yeah, I think it also creates that facility to just be willing to try anything so that when they do go into the workplace and invariably a new technology emerges or a new social media platform or a new way of doing things, the students are much more willing to play around knowing that they're unlikely to break anything by playing around with the new technology.
Yes. Let's talk about adult learners. So there are so many career changers, and I assume all this equipment is available only to students. A random person from the street cannot reserve your media lab, right?
That's
So you have to
correct.
be enrolled. Okay, but
Which
then
can
at
be
this,
enrolled.
oh, exactly. It seems like we're just advertising UT. Yes, come in. So, and I'd like to talk about enrollment in a moment, but I believe there are a lot of programs, either certificates or kind of shorter programs for adult learners. So can they, if they only take one college credit or a certification, can they also use those facilities and tools?
So anyone who ends up enrolled as a student is classified as a student. And so we don't really make a distinction from a student standpoint of whether you are enrolled in a continuing education master's program, for example, or enrolled in a traditional graduate program or in an undergraduate program. Everyone's a student. We do have a certain number of programs that don't really confer student status. So we've got some programs where you come in, you take a 1 day. For example, I teach some 1 day seminars. You come in, you take a day-long class with me, you get to hang out on campus for the day, but we're not then opening up all of our facilities to those learners. But anyone who enrolls as a student is got access to the things that our students have access to. And we even have there's a cool program for older adults, our Tower Fellows program, where people come back to school in their 50s and they take some classes and they have full run of the campus. And it's always a blast watching people in my age group, taking classes and engaging. It's great.
I love it. So let's talk about enrollment and strategies, how to attract more students, because there's obviously a demographic trend. So there's that enrollment cliff notion where naturally there are fewer younger people entering colleges because of the demographic shift, but also there's a shift in societal perception where, let's say, undergraduate degree may not be enough, they need a master's degree, or let's say some employers may favor specialized skills, let's say Marketo certification, Pardot certification, and maybe instead of a full 4 year degree, they're okay with 2 year degree. So how do you navigate the enrollment challenges?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting about higher education right now is that there is a growing divide between the have and have not schools. I mean, I am fortunate enough to work at a university where people across the state of Texas dress their kids up in burnt orange onesies in the hope that someday their child will go to UT. So, filling a class is not a challenge for us. We do spend a lot of time competing in the continuing education marketplace because we do want people to be Longhorns for life, and so we want them to keep coming back and engaging with us. And I think if you look at strategies that the universities are using to try to be successful, I think you do need to look across the board. And I think that continuing education in particular is an area where I think all schools need to be engaging and finding programs where, particularly in their region, they can provide education that really is going to benefit that economy close by. So for us, I mean, we do have a lot of programs in artificial intelligence. We have a high throughput, very low cost set of master's programs in computer science, data science, and AI that enroll thousands of students because our local economy in Texas really has a lot of need for those students. We're also ramping up a lot of programs in the semiconductor industry because we have some big plants like Samsung that are growing in the region, and so we're really trying to serve the region that way. And I think that when you look at the schools that are being successful in that space, part of what they're doing is finding programs that will fit the economy in the region and attracting students, even if they're attracting students nationally or internationally. By doing something that has a connection to the region, it provides opportunities even for continuing education learners to have internships and to connect with companies. And it also attracts people to a region in ways that can grow the workforce for that region. And I think that schools are going to have to do that. And I mean, unfortunately, the best thing you can do is to already have a great reputation. But the second best thing you can do, I think, is to really connect into that local economy. And that does require a mindset shift on the part of folks in higher education, because I think a lot of times college faculty don't really like to talk about careers. They would like to think of themselves as being a little bit above the fray. But in fact, our education mission is there to create really talented, skilled, thinking workforce members of the future. And some of those folks may go into academia. Many of them, however, are going to go into corporate America, into nonprofit America, into the government. And we have to embrace that as our mission, and not just embrace it, but add stories of how the work that we're doing can be employed in the workplace after graduation. Again, for all learners to be thinking about the experiences that will allow students to learn to take the knowledge that they're getting and use it to do things so that they're better skilled at that when they get to the workplace. We have to embrace the fact that our students are going to graduate and they're going to go get jobs, and that it's our purpose to make them as effective as possible at that when they get out.
Right. And what kind of partnerships do you have with businesses? Clearly, the Macomb's Business School, I remember, had a lot of connections with businesses. What about other programs, and how is it expanding these days?
Yeah, so we do this in several different ways. Obviously, there are certain colleges and schools that have a natural connection. So you mentioned our Macomb School of Business. I think also, for example, our Cockrell School of Engineering has a lot of connections to oil and gas, to other firms that employ engineers. But we also have a very robust industry engagement team that spends a lot of time working with employers to provide internships for students, but also to help those companies to see the University of Texas as a place where we have talented students that they should recruit. So we work very closely with a number of companies. Obviously, many of them have a strong presence in the state of Texas, but we also have a lot of national and international employers that we work with pretty closely. And that's as true in our College of Liberal Arts and our College of Natural Sciences as it is in the places that you might think of first, like the business school and the School of Engineering. And in fact, I would argue that our liberal arts students, our natural sciences students, are getting an education that makes them relevant in the workplace for an awfully long time. When we look at the success of our students over years, there's tremendous value in a four-year college degree that makes our students, and I think graduates of every major institution, our graduates are relevant throughout their careers because they've learned to adapt. And that's really the thing that we have to bear in mind is that technology is going to change. I mean, I graduated from college in 1988 and have managed to stay relevant, not because of any particular class I took in college, but because of the thinking skills that have allowed me to continue to learn and to continue to stay at least a half step in front of the technology.
Yes, that's a good point. So, do you have any insight into UT's marketing? Obviously, each school has its own marketing, and perhaps maybe I would want to hone in more on, let's say, business school,
Mhm.
since a lot of our audience would resonate with business. So, with such plethora of digital assets right now, it's overwhelming. And the more I talk to leading marketers, the more they're shifting to experiential marketing, face to face, versus just sending digital ads or white papers. So, are you aware of any change in your own marketing at the university?
It's always got to be a mix. So, the fact is that you still have to be omnipresent for people, which means you can't turn off the digital channels. You can't turn off even the signs at airports and things like that. I mean, getting outside of higher education for a moment, you could ask yourself, why does Coca-Cola need to advertise? There isn't a man, woman, or child on planet Earth unaware of the existence of Coca-Cola. But the reason that they advertise as strongly as they do is so that they are accessible, so that their brand is top of mind, so that when you're standing at the front of the line at a movie theater or at the fast food restaurant or whatever, you want a Coke. And similarly, schools have got to be out there top of mind. So, having that burnt orange across all channels, whether it's digital channels, whether it's seeing it on a Saturday afternoon in the fall because our football team is on, we have to be out there in those ways. That's a prerequisite to playing. After that, once you've got people who are now aware of the school and want to engage more deeply, that's where a lot of this other work comes in. It's one of the reasons why, for example, if we think about our Macomb School of Business, why our wonderful dean Lil Mills is traveling across the country all the time, meeting with students, meeting with leaders in different communities, and creating opportunities for people to engage, because we do need that, and we do need our community to show out as well. So we have our alumni base that also engages and helps people to see the university as a place that they'd want to go. So you also need those experiences, but I think there are times where we forget the value of just being always there. Part of what makes the if you think about the schools that everyone aspires to, whether it's an Ivy League school, the Harvards and the Princetons and the Yales, or whether it's the big state schools like the University of Texas or Michigan or Berkeley, um, part of what makes those schools so aspirationally important is the fact that they're everywhere. And so after you're everywhere, you then need to compete by creating those experiences, but you can't replace one with the other.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, that concludes the bulk of my questions, but I wonder if there's anything that you wanted to add or maybe tell more about your research or books.
Yeah, I mean, I would just encourage people to learn more about human thinking. I mean, I am a cognitive psychologist by training. I've actually been around AI my whole career, so seeing this have the impact that it's having in the world has been wonderful. But I really think that, unfortunately, and you know this because you've also got a psychology background. Um, Having a background in psychology is incredibly important. I mean, having a science background in general is critical, but most people, when they've studied science, have studied biology, chemistry, and physics. And no offense to those wonderful sciences, but the one thing we can guarantee for people is that they are going to come into contact with other people for the rest of their lives. And the more that you understand about the way that people function as individuals, as groups, as cultures, the more that you understand that and can plan for it, the more effective you're going to be in anything that you choose to do afterwards. So much of what we do revolves around communicating effectively, trying to influence other people's behavior. And it's very hard to influence other people's behavior if you don't understand what behavior is driven by in the first place.
Very well said. Well, thank you so much. It was such a joy to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk with you as well.